Hey, what's going on there, everyone? Earthmaster here, checking in on January 28, 2020, about 5:05 p.m. West Coast time here in Northern California, and a pretty busy earthquake day out there in the Caribbean area. That includes Cuba and the Jamaica area as well, as they've seen a 7.7 magnitude earthquake strike their region earlier today. Since then, there has been tremendous amount of earthquake activity within the vicinity, but not necessarily in an area where you would see aftershock activity. Most of the time when you see aftershock activity, it's right around the epicenter of the main quake, so to speak. Well, this 7.7 earthquake struck about 45 to 55 miles north of Jamaica, and roughly about the same distance from the coast of the Cuba area to the northeast there on that map that you're seeing. But the subsequent earthquake activity with large earthquakes following that 7.7 happened well to the west of the epicenter of the main quake, which is very, very interesting here. And that's kind of a telltale sign of something a little bit bigger about to happen down the road on this plate boundary here. The Caribbean plate is pretty active today. It has been. Puerto Rico has been very active, right? In the past couple weeks or so. They've had a huge swarm of earthquakes following that large one they had there a couple days ago. And let me bring this back up here real quick. Show you guys the 3D globe here and what I'm talking about. This is the area of the tremendous movement today. But over here towards the east, where the redder rings are, and where the latest earthquake, that 3.2 up here in the green flag, is kind of hidden behind everything, that's the Puerto Rico area. They have been seeing tremendous movement and a lot of earthquakes out there. Pretty much an earthquake swarm is what I call it. Some definite movement out here in the Caribbean plate area. 1 second here. And this map right here is just the 1 day, magnitude 2.5 and above. Not a whole lot of activity in this specific region. Right here, the map that you're looking at, within the last 7 days. So there's really no need to bring that up. But just showing 12 earthquakes here in this region. We'll go ahead and blow this up a little bit here. With the latest earthquake, looks like a 4.4 there in that area of interest there. Well to the west, probably 20, what do we got, 20, 40, 60, 70, possibly, at least according to my scale, about 70 miles well to the west of the main shaker, which is this one right here. Now in the blue circle was a 7.7. So a lot of activity occurring well away from the main quake. And like I said, that's a good potential, good sign of impending, subsequent movement here pretty soon, potentially. And it's, at least in this area, folks, there's only been one quake within the 7.7 area, and that was a looks like a 4.7, and even that is about 20 miles or so. I do have to take that back. 30, 60, 90. Okay, so roughly about over 100 miles or so to the west is where all this new subsequent earthquake activity is taking place following that 7.7. I thought it said 20 here on my mileage scale, but it's actually 30. So we're looking at much further distance away from that 7.7. And I'm talking about this new earthquake activity. The largest in this new earthquake activity, well away from the 7.7, was a 6.1 near the Cayman Islands region, roughly within the same fault system. And that fault system does have a name, and it's right there along the Caribbean, North American plate boundaries. It's the Oriente fault system. I think that's how you pronounce that. Oriente. I come up, it always comes up with these weird names that whenever I do an update video on earthquakes, it's like I'm always trying to correctly pronounce this name here. Anyway, this system right here runs along these, here's another word, okay, septentrional fault zone, which is pretty much just an extension that goes further to the east of Cuba, that runs along the similar to the Dominican Republic area, and that specific fault area was capable, or it was responsible, I should say, of a pretty large earthquake back in 1842. And I did have that up here. Let's see what that one was here real quick. It was actually an overload. Okay, so it was an 8.1 on the magnitude scale that pretty much devastated the Dominican Republic area on this same specific fault system, folks, but to the east of the activity that we're seeing here. Not a whole lot of activity to the east, which is good, but I'm just saying this whole fault system out here is very capable of producing a significant 8.0 or greater earthquake in this extremely active area today. But right now, like I say, the activity is kind of shooting towards the west. At least that's what it looks like. Whether it's a transfer of energy or a release of pressure, it is kind of making its way towards the west region here. Quite a few 4s. I don't see any 5s, which is kind of strange. Upper 4s, and like I said, that largest 6.1 earthquake right there in the blue happened. But that's where we're seeing all the earthquake activity right now, following that 7.7. No aftershock activity in that area, which is strange to me, very strange. I do want to bring up. Let's see, is this the map I want to? Yeah. A lot of folks know that I'm super big fan of Yellowstone National Park, right? We do run that here on the live stream. And I just want to pull up a map, folks, of, it's going to be transparent here a little bit on certain areas, but this is a seismograph station here in Yellowstone National Park. I wanted to show you guys how strong this 7.7 magnitude earthquake showed up in Yellowstone, Wyoming. I mean, it was tremendously strong and not felt, but showing up on the seismograph stations. Now, you know, those seismographs are very, very sensitive to ground movement, but the 7.7, many miles away, thousands of miles away, showing up there in Yellowstone National Park is pretty crazy. I'm pretty impressed with this earthquake here. I can't say it's a good thing for the folks out there, but at least in the Cuba and Jamaica area, but it's pretty crazy to see here on the Yellowstone seismograph stations. A little bit of historic seismic activity data on this map here shows, well, it's not any stranger to large earthquakes. This here is somewhat an overview of the area of interest here. You got Cuba up here to the north. It's not really marked, but you got Cuba up to the north. And I don't think my mouse is going to show up in here. I definitely need to figure out how to do that when I'm running my display driver. So if anybody has any clues, let me know. I'm open to learning as well, like everyone else. But within this vicinity here, within the fault system's name, once again, the Oriente fault system is very capable of producing some large earthquakes. Back in 1992, 6.8, which of course is smaller than the 7.7 we've seen today, occurred roughly within the same area, but on the north side of the plate boundary. This earthquake, 7.7, occurred on the south side of the plate boundary on the Caribbean plate. The 1992 earthquake, 6.8, occurred on the North American plate boundary to the north of the activity that we've seen today. But they also had a 7.6. You can see the main quake right there listed on this map back in 2018, west of the area that we're seeing right now. But in an area that's not, I guess it's not identical to the area that we're seeing right now. It's kind of more to the south and to the west of the current activity. But also the arrows right here kind of give you a general direction of the plate movements between the Caribbean and the North American plate. Kind of a east to west. I guess that's kind of why we didn't see a significant tsunami today. There was some confusion out there. I mean, I was looking on my side at tsunami.gov, which is the official site that I use in my update videos and that I turn to for very important information. And it took them well over an hour and a half to update any type of tsunami statement on this major earthquake that took place there in the Jamaica area. Meanwhile, out on Twitter, they were doing updates. But I don't run Twitter a lot. A lot of people don't run Twitter. So it's kind of a confusing situation for a government agency to issue some life-saving warnings, out on Twitter instead of their main website. I was completely irritated by that earlier today. A lot of folks are like, yeah, it's on Twitter, go check it out. Well, I don't run Twitter. A lot of people don't run Twitter. Facebook, some people don't run Facebook. So I think it's a little disappointing that they chose to go that route instead of updating their main website first. I get the social media accounts, I get how fast it spreads, but it's they should at least update them possibly at the same time, not an hour and a half later. So luckily there was no big, huge tsunami, and that's because of the plate boundary as a slip strike type area. Not any type of subduction in this region, which is very good because 7.7 in a subduction zone at a relatively shallow depth is going to create a tsunami. A big one. So let's go ahead and bring up this other map here. I think this is it right here. Here's a little bit more simpler view, okay, than this one here. It's a little hard to explain, especially if you're not aware of where it's what everything's pointing at. And that comes back to me being able to get my mouse out here, or at least some type of a symbol to show you guys on screen. Caribbean plate is right there in the direct middle of the. Hold on a second here. Direct middle of the screen, so to speak. Now it's kind of off centered. Shows the relative, at least the large scale movement on this map. How it kind of heads towards the southwest while it rubs up, or at least comes into contact with this other plate here. I can't remember. Oh, it's right there on the map. Cocos plate. See, I've never even heard of the Cocos plate. That's kind of interesting there. Maybe I have, but just kind of put it back in the back of my mind. But that is a plate kind of headed directly at the Caribbean plate. And there's all sorts of movement going on, folks. This is plate tectonics at work here. The Earth is an absolutely beautiful place to study, right? It's awesome. But this here, very simple map, shows you the relative plate movement and distribution and buildup of energy out there. All kind of leading to a point, so to speak, in an area that might be of concern. We'll just have to keep an eye on it and see where this activity leads. Here's a little bit localized fault system. A little bit closer view of the fault system here. With Cuba, Jamaica, and an area to the east in view. And also the arrows pointing as well. You got the Oriente fault system. Kind of where the activity took place today. There is a name for that, I guess. I mean, you got the Caribbean plate as a whole, but there's also this system, this little plate. It's a microplate, so to speak. And I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong. Ganav, microplate. That's kind of where this plate, where the 7.7 struck today. Not necessarily on the North American plate, not necessarily on the Caribbean plate, but on that Ganav plate system here, this microplate, excuse me. And you got the Mid-Cayman spreading center. It shows that's kind of ripping apart there, so to speak. You got the Walton fault zone down to the south near Jamaica. A left and right slip strike fault system there. No subduction within this area, which is very good for the folks there. Very good. So yeah, it's super complex, folks, but simple at the same time. The progression of movement right now. Let's go back over here to the browser that I was trying to show. Hold on a second here. The simple progression of movement right now shows an east to west type movement here. This is where we're seeing all the new activity following that 7.7. All this activity over here that's in the red, the blue, the yellow over here to the west near the Cayman Islands was not there prior to that 7.7. Now remember, any type of magnitude, I think anyway, and it's been pretty much proven, any type of magnitude does have an adverse reaction on whether it be a fault system 1,000 miles away or 100 miles away in this case. And that's roughly what we're looking at, about 100 miles away from the main shaker, where we're seeing that subsequent earthquake activity on a large scale. In my book, I mean, a 6.1 is a pretty good sized earthquake to take place following that 7.1. Not an aftershock at all. I did not see this earthquake activity as any type of aftershock activity. So I would be on guard, folks. Cayman Islands region, well down through here, possibly towards Honduras for potentially much larger earthquake activity. Over here to the east, yes, we are seeing a little bit of earthquake activity, and that's of course Puerto Rico over here. Some interesting red circles here, some newer earthquake activity out there in the Atlantic. Kind of well south of that plate boundary there, the North American and the Caribbean plate. But you know what? Anywhere, I think, in this system right now with the Caribbean plate movement and the activity we've seen today, I would be on guard anywhere within this map for potential further large-scale movement. And that's something we have to watch today, folks. I will be live streaming. I am live streaming 24/7 here on this channel. Earthquake and volcanic activity updates. And I try to, at least when I'm here, to update anything over 6.1 or 6.0 in an update video. And we will continue to do that. But right now, folks, just be on guard. Stay safe out there. I know there's a lot of activity going on. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of confusion, so to speak, in the tsunami statement world. You know, like I say, if you got Twitter, maybe it's a good thing to subscribe to the Tsunami Warning Center on there. I am now. But I always like to check their main website first, because I've always gone to their main website for the most updated information on that. And normally, in the past, that's what they've chosen to do. This time, I don't know why. They've chosen to go the Twitter route. And it confused me. It confused a lot of people out there, whether there was or not a tsunami. But luckily, there wasn't a big one. So anyway, folks, please stay safe out there no matter where you're at. I'm out here in Northern California. I'm out here in earthquake country. So, of course, I'm always having an earthquake plan. Always stay stocked up on your necessities, gas, water, toilet paper, whatever. Always good to be prepared here, no matter where you're at, and especially this time right now out there around the Caribbean. So I will be out here on the side watching stuff, and up here on the live stream doing any updates if they require me to do so. Anyway, we'll be out here, folks. Have a good evening if I don't talk to you. Stay safe.